Hello, welcome back to my channel. This is my take. My name is Krisha, where we talk about Kenya, culture, and character. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button so that you don't just keep up but stay ahead. So today might actually sting just a little bit because we are asking ourselves a question. Are Kenyans losing faith or finding God differently? Now, I do not know what your answer is from behind where you sit and where you're listening me from. It's really something that has stuck in my mind. When last did you go to church? When last did you interact with fellow worshippers, fellow believers, friends, Bible study group? Which one is it? Is it cell group? When last did you interact with a member of a church where you fellowship, where you worship, where you get fed, as we like to call it? You see, as much as church have bloomed from out of nowhere, I do not know where you live, but where I live, there is a church every single 10 steps. You walk right, you'll find a church. You'll walk right, left, forward, backward. You're surrounded by churches. But are there believers? Are there followers? Are there people who call themselves the bride alongside a church? Or are we finding God individually? Creating a relationship privately in your bedroom. You see, that private place that the Bible talks about, where you give your prayers in all genuineness, where you kneel down to pray for 10 minutes and find yourself an hour later deep in prayer, talking in tongues you never planned. Where is it that you find your faith today? Is it a Sunday service of 30 minutes to an hour, a sermon that you listen to, or a podcast that sounded much better, much articulated, less fluff? When did you find yourself in the position you are today? Are you still a believer of the church? See, the church is the bride, as the word of God tells us. But we are the temple, aren't we? And if the temple is me, and I've kept myself that, and when I go to church, I don't feel it. I feel out of place. You see, churches are no longer just the premises. We have them online. We have them broadcasted, like televised, every single place, everywhere. And after a sermon, of course, tithing is there, whether it's being asked verbally or it's a line, a hotline that has been placed there, a pay bill, a pochi, whichever it is that works for your place, there is that provision. So are you paying your tithe where you're fed? And is your tithe being used for good or to tie you down? You see, today we no longer just pay tithe for the sake of tithing. We sow seeds because we are told to. You're told, pay this much. But it's not referenced anywhere in the Bible. Yes, we say thanksgiving, but how do you pay your thanks? And to whom? And does that person bless you or curse you? Because even the word of God says, a cursed man cannot bless. And even the pastors we have in the churches today, some of which are cursed, because behind the scenes they are preaching something they do not practice. So are you getting blessings and your life thrives, or are you getting curses and your life becomes stagnated and you start wondering, what went wrong? What did I do wrong? What curses did my ancestors give me? Because at this point, I don't even understand. Do you ever pray for yourself? Do you ever dedicate yourself to God? Because we have the power to do that. The door was opened the moment he died and rose and left things anew. You are to pray for yourself. And while communion and fellowship is good, remember, today, is the pastor doing his work? Are the priests doing their jobs? Because we have seen it. We depend on them to negotiate for us, to intervene for us. But do they? Are Kenyans, this country, beloved country of mine, are we losing faith or finding God differently? I don't know about you, but I understand the word more when I read it myself. I get revelations differently when I read the word myself. It's good to fellowship with other believers, and that's why it's called a fellowship. But going to church, listening to a sermon, just once on a Sunday service isn't enough. If that's the only time you get to hear the word, it's not enough. But if you listen, if you read by yourself, whether it's a verse, a line, a chapter, a summary of a book. You get your own understanding. And in that, you pray for God's revelation. And that revelation is revealed to you because you made it intentional to read the word, to pursue God, because the word of God is He Himself. So, today, a lot more people are online. Online churches are everywhere. Actually, today we have churches that don't have a physical location, where you just turn on your TV on Sunday and that's the crowd, that's the followers. And after that, you're required to pay a tithe. But do you ever ask yourself why they do that? Because you pay tithe, you pay tithe and offering where you're fed. Because that's what keeps the gospel running. Because that's what allows whoever is broadcasting to broadcast next time. And when you think it's wrong for that person to ask, they should ask. They should ask you to pay tithe, to allow themselves to bring that gospel to you again next time. So if your church is online, if your church is physical, whichever one it is, or you just don't go to church at all, I encourage you to find a believer, because God, to find a place of worship, not necessarily a church. You see, where one or two or three are gathered, God is there. Apparently, He is here right now. And if you're listening, it's because He is. And while I may be talking and asking questions, sometimes you need to ask them yourself. I want to hear you in the comment section and tell me what you feel about this. Our youths in Kenya, do we still trust God to deliver? Do we still trust God with our lives? You see, He is the author of everything, therefore our life. And I remember this particular moment during maandamano, a girl that literally just more like left a will. If she goes out and gets killed, maybe the family will get paid some millions, which she could never make when she was alive, and it would be better than nothing. And leaving it online, allowing the online community to see the hopelessness. This is a part where we have reached to ask ourselves questions. Have we lost faith completely? You see, we believe that leaders are not born, they are chosen by God and placed in that particular position for a reason. Do we still trust that that is what God is doing today? You see, when a leader is chosen, when a leader is announced, we all must follow because God chose that leader. God placed them in that position for a reason. Every time you walk out of your house, every time you pray in the morning when you wake up to give thanks or to do whatever it is you like to do, whether you like to journal, if it's not a prayer, if you like to talk to God in your own differently, how is it that you find God yourself? Are you still holding on to faith? Or are you finding God differently? When you go to church, do you feel inspired for the week ahead? Do you feel inspired to live, to be grateful? Do you believe? Because that's what believers do. Believe. You see, many Kenyans grew up in simple faith. Go to church, pray, do good, and repeat. But then we grew up. We saw scandals. We saw manipulation. We saw politics on pulpits. And suddenly the church was not the safest place to share. It wasn't the safest place to run to. If you are here in 2007, I'm sure you heard, if you didn't experience, that people were attacked actually in church where they were supposed to find safety. And while that story is bigger than that line itself, I want to tell you that today, people are finding God in their own way. You don't need a church. You don't need a priest. You don't need a pastor. You don't need a leader. You only need to intentionally pursue God. You see the way the Word of God talks of individuals trying to find God, the way an individual pursues God relentlessly until God looks at them, until they see the face of God while even it's not supposed to be seen. That's what we are doing today. Individually, gospel and religion and finding God has become, faith have become personal, not a collective responsibility, not the church, not followers, or today we have many on social media. I do not know if Jesus was here today, how many of those he would have. But to be honest, this is a personal journey. And there is no way around church. There is no way around faith. There is no other way around finding God. The Word of God says it clearly. The only way to the Father is through the Son. And while we say that, we recognize them as one because Jesus gave himself for us. You see, the freedom we enjoy, the life we live is paid for. And therefore, you are allowed to go to God. And anything you thought you knew or had is anything you may have done to feel unclean, to feel unworthy, is wiped out and replaced by the peace that only He can provide. So if you are like me, whose interest is beyond being a follower, a believer, but more finding God and faith in my own way, pick up the book, the Word of God, not the motivational speaker's book that you bought the previous day. The good old book that has always been there. Read it. There is no book in this world that can provide a life, a manual for you to live a successful life, a fulfilled life. And I do not know how you define success, but we all succeed in different ways. And in all those different ways, understand what God called you to do, to live a life of abundance. And abundance is not limited to one area or aspect of your life. It's in every way. Don't let anybody manipulate you into saying, if you don't do this, then you don't get this. No. It doesn't say that anywhere in the Word of God. That if you don't buy the preacher's motivational book, then you're not succeeding in life because you don't know what they know. No. You all know the same thing, God. You all read the same book, the Bible. If you are a Christian, I'll tell you, because not very long ago, and if you watch news, you've seen that in Somalia, there's a bill that was passed and also shot down where old men are crying to marry children. And doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from the one place they know how to live their life, the Quran. And even when you're fighting, and even when they are crying on social media, it's not a political fight, it's a religious fight, because they are claiming that the world is ending because old men are being restricted from abusing children, molesting children, in the name of marriage, in the name of, I do not know who brought the same idea. But it doesn't come from nowhere, because in that same book, the prophet himself, in whom they believe and follow the word to the latter, and I'll tell you that because I'm sure if you lived anywhere close to a Muslim, you know how important their religion is and the values they are in, because that same prophet married a child. So what are you telling them? Writing a policy that denies them what their Messiah, Muhammad, did, the life he enjoyed. That's exactly what they're looking for. But I'm curious, and forgive me for this, what's an old man waiting for to marry a child? Weren't they supposed to marry when they were young? Were they mentally unstable to wait until they're 70 to marry a 10-year-old? I do not understand the psychology. Even though the faith, the religion allows you to marry 3 women or 4, whichever one it is, aren't you young enough to choose your 4 women in your young years and save children from shame, from ruining their own life? You see, there is this saying in the Muslim world, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a woman, a young girl, is either married or dead. So what are we saying? Outside of marriage, girls don't have a life. And evidently we did see that in other areas, in other Islamic culture, they kill them. They kill them if they don't live according to the standards of men. They are men. It's not according to the standard of God. I actually don't believe that. Show me where it's written. I probably should go back and read it so that I can quote facts. I do not have them. So tell me who gave people authority to kill. Well, I don't expect you to believe in biblical values if you're not a Christian. But common sense should be able to tell you that a child does not need marriage. They need protection. They need provision. They need a life, an education. But over and beyond, old men and even young Muslim believers, men, are shouting on social media in belief of they should be allowed to marry children. There was this young man who is enjoying life in America, in a country where freedom of worship is allowed, and that's precisely why he is in that country enjoying that life, yet screams that Somalia wants to allow freedom of worship so that it's not dominantly Muslim, but other religions allowed, other beliefs allowed. But in his perspective, the world is ending. It is not going to be about Muslims anymore. It's going to be, I'm sorry, what? You are in America enjoying the life of what freedom of worship looks like, living your life happy, enjoying, thriving in your career. And yet, you think Americans are stupid to have allowed it for you to be there. Before I go off about this religion, because it's religion, which is what we are talking here. Kenyans, are they losing faith? Because I feel like while Somalia may be thinking they are losing their faith by virtue of being denied marriage of children, Kenya, we are fighting for stability in our political era. Tell me which African country we've seen youths of our country lead movements, a change, because it's felt more than people losing life for something bigger than themselves. And while it's wrong and in which they lost their life should be recorded in history to be remembered of their sacrifices, it is not. Yet, we still have those who are fighting to keep the right to marry a minor. So, this video, I want to hear you in the comment section. When last did you go to church? And how are you finding God? It's not about where is the church. It's about where are we? Because God is where you are. And if you choose to fellowship, a fellowship of 3, doing Bible study together, praising God, that's where you find God. That's where you are inspired to live your life. So, allow me to see you in the next video. Because if this one didn't feel deep, I want you to watch out for the next one.